Okay, so you want to own a medieval ship. A wooden vessel with a tall sail, a hold full of wine, cloth, amber, furs, honey, ceramics, spices, or whatever can be bought cheaply in one port and sold dearly in another. You leave the harbor with the wind behind you, while merchants on land spend weeks moving the same goods over roads, bridges, forests, and muddy tracks. That is the dream. You are not just buying a boat, you are buying a faster route through an expensive world. The sea turns distance into opportunity. A small sailing ship can carry goods between places where overland transport would be slower, more dangerous, and substantially more expensive. If the cargo arrives, you can sell it far from where you bought it. If the price difference is large enough, the voyage appears to have paid for itself before the ship even returns. But there is a problem hidden inside that beautiful picture. We do not have a reliable universal price for a medieval ship. We do not have one standard construction budget, one crew cost, one cargo capacity, one freight rate, or one annual profit. A vessel in the Baltic during the late 13th century was not the same business as a galley in the Mediterranean several centuries earlier. A merchant owner was not the same as a nobleman with a warship, a fisherman, a ferry operator, or a group of investors carrying one cargo. So the honest economic question is not, how much does a medieval ship make? The real question is this: are you buying a ship, or are you buying a fragile claim on trade, political protection, favorable prices, reliable weather, and a voyage that has not happened yet? Because the ship itself does not make money sitting in the harbor. It begins making money only when it moves something valuable, reaches the destination, survives the journey, and turns that movement into a payment. And the payment may arrive after the timber, sales, provisions, repairs, port charges, political dues, and cargo have already consumed your available resources. That is the paradox of owning a medieval ship. The vessel is the visible asset. The real business is surviving the invisible obligations attached to it. Let us place you in a representative setting, late medieval Northern Europe, where small sailing vessels move along the North Sea and Baltic trade routes. This is not a reconstruction of one named ship or one surviving account book. It is a historically grounded model for understanding the decisions an owner would face. Your first choice comes before the ship reaches the water. Do you build it, buy it, or join with other merchants to share the risk? The sources available to us cannot provide a dependable construction price, timber bill, sail bill, rigging budget, building time, or finished purchase price for a typical medieval cargo vessel. That absence is not a minor inconvenience. It changes what can honestly be calculated. A modern business plan might begin with a purchase price and work forward toward revenue. For a medieval ship, that can create a false sense of precision. You could convert an old coin into a modern currency, multiply the result by an imagined cargo capacity, and produce a very impressive number. The problem is that the conversion would usually combine different regions, different centuries, different qualities of coin, and different purchasing powers. The answer might look mathematical while being almost entirely invented. What you can say with confidence is that entry required more than a hull. There was the vessel itself: timber, planks, fastenings, mast, sail, ropes, steering gear, anchors, and the tools needed to keep the whole arrangement functional. There was the cargo, or at least the money required to prepare for cargo. There were provisions for the people aboard. There were repairs before departure and repairs after arrival. There were shoreside relationships, storage arrangements, merchants, port officials, and people willing to trust you with goods or money. And there was time. A ship under construction earns nothing. A ship waiting for cargo earns nothing. A ship delayed by weather earns nothing. A ship in need of repair may earn negative income because the owner is still responsible for the vessel while the vessel is producing no receipts. That is the first hidden cost. Not just what the ship consumes, but what it prevents your capital from doing elsewhere. You may imagine yourself as the sole owner, but that is only one possibility. Medieval shipping could involve merchants, co-owners, investors, town institutions, nobles, religious institutions, or commercial partnerships, depending on the place and period. The supplied evidence does not establish one universal financing structure, and it would be misleading to pretend that every ship was bought through the same arrangement. But the economic logic is clear. The more of the vessel you own, the more of the upside belongs to you when the voyage succeeds. The more of the vessel you own, the more of the loss belongs to you when it fails. A shared ship can reduce the amount of capital one person must commit. It also divides control, decision-making, and returns. A sole owner may have more freedom to choose a route or cargo, but must absorb the full cost of delay, repair, seizure, or loss. You are not choosing only between ownership and partnership. You are choosing how much uncertainty you are willing to carry personally. Now imagine the ship finished, tied to the quay, with an empty hold. You have bought the thing everyone can see, but you have not necessarily bought access to the thing that makes it valuable. A medieval commercial ship needs a market. It needs merchants with goods to move, buyers at the destination, and some way to operate within the political and institutional environment of the port. Town leagues, merchant associations, and guilds could influence access, bargaining power, protection, and the distribution of economic benefits. But guild membership was not a universal license that automatically granted ownership or profit. Shipbuilding knowledge itself did not always spread through comprehensive guild apprenticeships. In some innovative shipbuilding regions, such as the Netherlands, that system was not central in the way people might assume. So the ship is not simply a machine that you purchase and turn on. It is a ticket into a network, and the value of that ticket depends on who recognizes it, who protects it, who supplies it, and who is willing to trade with it. This is where the first major illusion disappears. You think you bought a floating asset. What you actually bought is a bundle of responsibilities. A hull that must remain seaworthy, a crew that must be fed and coordinated, cargo that must be found and financed, and relationships that must survive every port between departure and sail. Now follow the first coin. There are two basic ways your ship might earn money. The first is freight carriage. Another merchant owns the goods, and you are paid to transport them. In that arrangement, the ship is a service business. You earn a freight receipt, while the cargo owner bears more of the risk associated with buying and selling the goods. The second is own account trade. You buy the cargo yourself, carry it to another market, and sell it at a higher price. In that arrangement, the apparent revenue can be much larger because the sale proceeds include the value of the goods. But that does not mean the ship earned all of that money. The cargo had to be purchased first. If you buy wine in one port and sell it in another, the money received at the destination is not pure ship revenue. Part of it returns the original cargo cost. Part covers handling and movement. Part may be absorbed by tolls, duties, commissions, spoilage, delays, or political payments. Only what remains after those obligations is your trading margin. This distinction is easy to miss because the largest number on the ledger is usually the cargo sale. A ship can be carrying an expensive load and still be a poor business. The same is true in the opposite direction. A ship can carry modest-looking freight but produce a useful result if it keeps its costs low, avoids long delays, and returns with another profitable load. The vessel does not care how impressive the sail sounds. The vessel cares how much of the money remains after everyone else has been paid. This is why the most attractive part of the business may not be the cargo itself. It may be the ability to move cargo more cheaply than land routes allow. Medieval commerce expanded partly because maritime transport could reduce the cost of moving goods over long distances. The ship's commercial advantage was not necessarily that it created valuable goods. It created a cheaper path between markets. You were selling movement. And movement only becomes profitable when the saving is greater than the cost and danger of making it happen. At the harbor, that difference becomes physical. Before departure, someone must acquire or assemble the goods. They must be loaded. The vessel must be provisioned. The crew must be ready. The route must be chosen. The weather must cooperate enough to make departure sensible. The ship must leave with enough value in the hold to justify the journey, but not so much that one loss destroys everything. If you are carrying another merchant's cargo, you may have a clearer revenue claim, but less control over the goods. If you are trading for yourself, you may capture more of the margin, but also expose your capital to the entire price difference between purchase and sale. One decision gives you thinner upside with less direct cargo risk. The other gives you greater upside with the possibility that your ship, your cargo, and your working capital are all tied to the same voyage. That is not diversification. That is concentration floating on water. Then the ordinary costs begin. The crew must be compensated or otherwise supported. The people aboard need food and supplies. The vessel needs repairs and replacement materials. Cargo must be loaded and unloaded. Ports may impose dues, tolls, customs, or other charges. Trade may require protection, political favors, or institutional payments. Financing obligations may exist depending on the ownership arrangement, and every extra day spent waiting can postpone the moment when receipts return. We do not have reliable historical rates for these categories across medieval Europe. We cannot responsibly tell you that a typical crew cost a certain amount, that repairs consumed a certain share of revenue, or that one standard voyage required a fixed number of coins, but the sequence matters even without precise rate. Money leaves before money returns. You commit capital to the vessel. You commit resources to preparation. You commit resources to cargo or transport. The ship sails. Only after arrival, unloading, sale, or settlement does the business begin to recover what it spent. That creates a dangerous gap. A profitable voyage on paper can still leave you short of available money if the next departure must be prepared before the previous proceeds have fully arrived. If the cargo is sold on delayed terms, the ship may return physically before the money returns financially. Meanwhile, the crew, repairs, provisions, and port obligations do not wait for your buyer to feel generous. The medieval version of cash flow is simple to understand. The ship moves first. The money follows later, and sometimes the money never follows at all. The hidden cost that ordinary observers miss is not merely piracy, it is uncertainty. Piracy and predatory political actors were serious enough that town leagues and commercial networks formed partly to suppress piracy, police routes, and resist powerful individuals who could extract wealth from merchants. The existence of those institutions tells you something important. Security was not a decorative feature of trade. It was part of the commercial model. You may picture a pirate attack as a dramatic event. A ship sinks, a cargo is taken, and the story ends. For the owner, the damage begins earlier. A threat may force a longer route. A departure may be delayed until protection is available. A port may become inaccessible. A cargo may have to be sold quickly at a worse price. A merchant may decide not to use your ship next time because your route is considered unsafe. The cost is not only the goods lost during an attack, it is the business opportunities that disappear because people stop trusting the route. And unlike a modern insurance spreadsheet, the evidence supplied here does not give us a reliable loss probability. We cannot say that one ship in a certain number was lost, or that piracy reduced annual profits by a fixed percentage. Any exact figure would be a guess dressed as history. That is why the real threat is often the assumption that you can calculate your way out of uncertainty. You can count planks. You can count barrels. You can count the money received at the destination. But you cannot count a future storm as if it were already known. Now let us build a voyage ledger without pretending to know numbers that the evidence cannot support. Your first line is the receipt. If you carry cargo for someone else, this may be a freight payment. If you trade for yourself, it is the proceeds from selling the goods. Your second line is the cargo cost. If you owned the goods, remove that, and the dramatic sale price immediately becomes smaller. Your third line is the cost of making the voyage happen. Provisions, crew support, loading and unloading, repairs, port payments, tolls, customs, and protection-related expenses. Your fourth line is the cost of owning the vessel between voyages, maintenance, storage, preparation, and whatever long-term obligations came with acquiring it. Your fifth line is loss. If the ship arrives late, the cargo may sell for less. If the cargo is damaged, the sale proceeds shrink. If the vessel is seized, the voyage may produce no receipt at all. If the ship survives but needs major repair, the next voyage may be delayed. Only what remains after those lines can be called an operating result. And even that result is not automatically the owner's personal wealth. It may need to be divided among co-owners, investors, lenders, partners, or people who supplied the cargo. This is the point where many modern explanations go wrong. They take the value of a cargo, subtract a few imaginary costs, and announce a medieval profit margin. But a ship's economics cannot be separated from its ownership structure, region, century, vessel type, cargo, route, and political environment. Without those details, a precise return is not analysis. It is fiction. The lack of exact data does not mean medieval shipping was unprofitable. It means profitability was local, specific, and difficult to summarize with one number. The strong case is easy to imagine. Your vessel secures a valuable cargo. Sea transports remains cheaper than moving the same goods overland. A commercial network gives you access to buyers and some protection from predatory actors. The ship arrives on time, the cargo retains its value, and the proceeds are enough to cover the voyage, support the vessel, and leave a surplus for the owner or owners. That is the attractive version of the business. But notice what created the result. Not merely the ship. The ship provided capacity. The network provided access. The cargo created the potential margin. The route reduced transport cost. The political environment allowed the transaction to happen, and luck kept the whole structure from collapsing. Now consider the ordinary case. The ship sails, but the cargo does not produce an extraordinary price. The journey takes longer than expected. Repairs cost more than planned. Institutional payments reduce the margin. The vessel returns with enough money to remain active, but not enough to make the owner feel rich. This is the kind of outcome that can look successful from the harbor. The ship came back, the crew was paid, the cargo was sold. There is activity everywhere, but the owner's capital has barely grown. The vessel has become a job, not a fortune. You may earn a living through repeated voyages, but your wealth remains tied up in wood, inventory, and obligations that cannot be instantly converted into available coin. Now consider the adverse case. A threat delays departure. A route becomes unsafe, a cargo price falls. A political authority imposes heavier demands. Currency becomes unstable in the market where you expected to sell. The ship needs repair before it can move again. Your expected receipt is delayed, but the next set of obligations arrives on schedule. You may still own the vessel. You may still technically possess an asset. But if you cannot prepare the next voyage, possession does not help. A ship without working capital is a stranded business. A specific medieval example shows why fiscal and monetary conditions matter, but it must be handled carefully. Accounts of the kingdom associated with Alfonso X describe economic difficulties connected with ambitious spending, aggressive controls, unstable currency, and heavy taxation. That is not a verified ship owner failure, and it does not prove that all medieval commerce suffered in the same way. It is a kingdom-level warning, not a shipping ledger, but the warning is relevant. Your ship may be seaworthy, and your cargo may be valuable. If the environment around the transaction becomes unstable, the value of both can be difficult to realize. The danger is not always that the ship disappears. Sometimes the ship returns, but the economic world it was supposed to serve has changed. This is why the most important asset in the business may be neither the hull nor the cargo. It may be commercial access. Consider the Hanseatic network, described as a federation of German towns with influence across North and Baltic sea trade from roughly the 13th into the 15th centuries. Different descriptions use different dates and different meanings of control or dominance. But the larger lesson is consistent. Organized commercial networks could create bargaining power, political protection, and access to markets that an isolated owner might struggle to obtain. The Hanse is not proof that every individual ship owner became wealthy. It is proof that the winning unit of competition may have been larger than a single ship. An independent owner asks, "Can my vessel reach the market?" A powerful network asks, "Can we influence which merchants reach the market? Under what conditions? And with whose protection?" That is a completely different economic position. The network can spread information, defend commercial privileges, coordinate pressure, and reduce some of the disadvantages of operating alone. It may also concentrate benefits among its owners, investors, and political allies. Access becomes a source of power, and power becomes a cost imposed on outsiders. So if you are entering this business alone, the question is not only whether your ship can sail. The question is whether your ship can compete against people whose real asset is institutional influence. This is the second major reversal. The ship appears to be the business. The network around the ship may be the business. A sensible owner would therefore face several uncomfortable choices. Do you carry your own cargo, or let another merchant take the trading risk? Do you chase the most valuable goods, or choose goods that are easier to sell and less dangerous to lose? Do you make one ambitious long-distance voyage, or several shorter journeys with smaller margins? Do you sail alone, or pay for relationships that may provide protection and access? Do you spend scarce resources improving the vessel or preserve them as a reserve for repairs and delays? None of these decisions has one universal answer. The right choice depends on place, time, route, vessel, cargo, and the political environment. But the structure is universal. You are constantly trading upside for survivability. The most profitable looking cargo may also be the cargo most worth stealing. The most distant market may offer the largest price difference and the longest period before money returns. The cheapest route may pass through waters where a single political change can destroy the calculation. A conservative owner may earn less on an individual voyage and survive long enough to make another. An aggressive owner may earn more when everything works and lose the entire operation when one assumption fails. That is the medieval version of operating leverage. The business magnifies good conditions, but it also magnifies bad ones. And the ship itself can make the problem worse. A vessel is not like a store that closes at night while its inventory remains on shelves. It is an operating asset exposed to weather, distance, and physical deterioration. Every voyage consumes time and materials. Every delay reduces the number of opportunity available during the season or trading cycle. Every repair decision becomes a choice between spending now and risking a more expensive failure later. If you postpone maintenance, you preserve available coin today and increase the chance of losing time tomorrow. If you repair aggressively, you may protect the vessel while reducing the resources available for cargo. If you keep the ship in port, you reduce exposure to the sea, but also reduce the chance of revenue. There is no passive ownership here. The ship is either earning, preparing to earn, waiting to earn, or costing you money while unable to earn. Now imagine that your first voyage succeeds. The cargo arrives, the buyer pays, the ship returns, you have made a surplus. This is the most dangerous moment in the entire story. A successful voyage can convince you that your assumptions were correct. You may believe the route is safe, the cargo is reliable, and the vessel has finally proven its value. You may use the surplus to enlarge the next cargo, buy a larger ship, or commit to a more ambitious market. But the successful voyage did not prove that the business is safe. It only proved that one combination of cargo, route, timing, politics, weather, and price happened to work. Your own success can become the argument for taking on more risk. That is how a business expands before it has established a reserve. The larger ship may carry more cargo, but it also concentrates more value in one place. The longer route may offer a wider price difference, but it increases exposure to delay and predation. The more expensive cargo may produce a larger receipt, but it can make one loss catastrophic. Scale can reduce some costs and increase bargaining power. It can also make every mistake larger. A single ship can lose one voyage. A network of ships can lose a pattern of voyages. The same commercial structure that creates wealth can multiply losses when the environment changes. This is why the Hanseatic example matters more as an institutional story than as a personal success story. Organized trade could make shipping more resilient, but resilience came from relationships, coordination, protection, and market power, not from owning wood and sail in isolation. Now let us return to the question of how much you can earn. The most honest answer is that the supplied historical evidence cannot support a reliable amount. It cannot establish a defensible purchase price, construction cost, annual operating cost, cargo capacity, freight rate, crew cost, repair schedule, loss probability, or break-even number for a generic medieval ship. It cannot tell us whether an individual owner earned a certain return in a certain year without a specific account book or contract. So no responsible historian should tell you that owning a medieval ship produced a standard's annual income. What can be said is more useful. In a favorable operating story, your ship earns a surplus because sea transport preserves its cost advantage. Cargo demand exists, a network helps you to reach markets, and the vessel returns without a major interruption. You may recover operating expenses and create a meaningful surplus, but the size depends on details we cannot safely fill in. In the base story, the vessel trades successfully enough to continue operating, but the owner's reward is limited by repairs, delays, institutional charges, and capital tied up in the ship and cargo. The business works, but it may resemble a demanding occupation more than a passive investment. In the adverse story, one delayed payment arrives after the next voyage must be prepared, or one political, security, or operational shock destroys the expected margin. The ship may survive while the owner's available resources disappear. If the vessel or cargo is lost, the capital committed to the venture may be permanently gone. That is the true range of outcomes, not a neat percentage. A surplus, a livelihood, or a ruinous interruption. The return also depends on what you mean by profit. Is it the amount left from one voyage? Is it the share paid to an owner after partners and investors are compensated? Is it the value of the ship still sitting in the harbor? Is it the value of future access to trade? These are not the same thing. A vessel may retain value while producing no immediate income. A successful voyage may increase the owner's reputation without increasing available coin. A valuable cargo may create a large sale receipt while leaving little trading margin. The accounting language matters because medieval wealth could be trapped in assets and claims just as easily as modern wealth can be trapped in property or inventory. You may look rich on paper and still be unable to fund the next departure. That is the final danger. Now return to the opening image. The sail is full. The ship is leaving the harbor. The hold is filled with goods that may be worth much more at the other end of the sea. From the quay, the vessel looks like a machine for turning distance into money. But the ship is not the machine. The machine is the entire system around it. A vessel that remains usable, cargo that can be acquired and sold, a route that can be protected, institutions that permit access, buyers who can pay, and enough reserve to survive the voyage that goes wrong. When you see a medieval ship, do not ask only how much cargo it can carry. Ask who owns the cargo, who controls the route, who bears the loss, who gets paid first, and whether the owner has enough resources to sail again after a bad voyage. Because owning a medieval ship is not really owning a boat. It is owning the risk of moving value through an uncertain world.